Evil Dead Rise is out in theaters, latest film in the long-running Evil Dead franchise. This one technically takes place in the same continuity as the original trilogy, although it's only sort of in the hidden details. Generally speaking, you absolutely don't have to watch any of the previous films to know perfectly well what's going on. So it does kind of function as a standalone film or another reboot if they end up making some direct sequels to this one. The story this time around does not start in a cabin in the woods, or rather, it sort of does, with an amazing tongue-in-cheek opening shot. It has a 10-minute prologue, about 10 minutes, that takes place in a cabin, but then we quickly go back one day before in time and follow another group of characters in another location entirely. Beth is a young woman working as a roadie. She visits her family in Los Angeles, a rainy, dark Los Angeles, which is perhaps the first time I've seen the city depicted as such on film. She visits her sister Ellie and her 3 children. They live in this rundown apartment building marked for demolition. There's a mild earthquake early on in the film, which reveals a hidden room beneath the parking garage underground. One of the kids is curious, goes in there, recovers a book and a couple of records from that room, and once he begins to play with them, it turns out it's the Necronomicon, and things turn to absolute shit, with the mother being the first one to be possessed by the demonic presence. The rest of it plays out as you'd expect. Lots of gore, lots of violence, lots of blood and shock factor. Trust me, when I say the film is not for the squeamish, I really mean it. There are some very unpleasant sequences in it, and the director apparently said that his intention was to make people vomit. And also, the film is pretty bold in how cruel it is to the children. Often when you see children in horror, you kind of get the sense, okay, well, they're not going to kill them, they're safe. Not necessarily here. So, let me say this. Out of the previous Evil Dead movies, I liked the last one the most, the Evil Dead film from 2013, and I liked it because apart from being just a brutal slasher, it had something to say. It had an underlying story about addiction. Rise seems to have a similar undercurrent buried somewhere deep within the film, this time about motherhood. At the beginning, Beth is shown to do a pregnancy test, and it's kind of clear that she's not ready to have children. And then over the course of the film, of course, she has to protect and defend the children of her sister, defend them from their own mother, essentially, and the demon possessing her. In the process, she's learning to be the mother herself. The problem for me is I felt that the movie doesn't seem to realize that it has this story going on and seems disinterested in exploring the psychological aspects of it. Instead, it focuses purely on gore, blood, mutilation, and brutal killing, which is a shame because this isn't something I particularly enjoy. I don't find it entertaining nor scary, so if there isn't anything more, if there isn't anything underneath, I'm kind of underwhelmed. And there are some fun sequences here, like there's a door keyhole scene, for instance, or a couple of them actually, for instance, and they are pretty well made. I liked how a lot of stuff is set up very early on to come into play later. There's pretty much nothing that comes out of nowhere. The movie seems well constructed in that regard. Also, Alyssa Sutherland is fantastic as the possessed mother. She is absolutely creepy in her movements and facial expressions. It's a very good job from her. But having said that, it's just too little for me. It's too shallow. It's just gore for the sake of gore with little substance underneath. I realize that a lot of people enjoy movies like that, and from what I've read on the internet, fans of the franchise generally enjoyed Rise as well. I personally didn't.